Santa Claus. We all know, we all love the jolly, I keep wanting to say jolly green giant, the jolly fat man who eats your cookies and gives your children presents. We love that guy, man. We love him, right? We all love him. I mean, despite the fact that he gives poor kids proportionally poor presents, but we're not going to talk about that. And he's had a lot of evil versions over the years. Like most good things, they have an evil version. You know, you got TikTok and YouTube Shorts, God and Satan, Santa and the Grinch, or Krampus. Those two probably being the most popular versions of an evil Santa Claus. The Grinch has kind of just become a part of Christmas culture at this point. The Grinch has kind of become a part of slang nowadays. Like your buddy's not being all holly jolly, merry Christmassy, and you just say, hey man, you're being kind of a Grinch. Now the Grinch originates from Dr. Seuss, as we all should know, but he actually, or at least Dr. Seuss's character of the Grinch, has changed a little bit. I mean, Dr. Seuss's first mention of a Grinch was in his book Scrambled Eggs Super, where he drew a beagle-beaked, bald-headed Grinch. Now, I don't really know anything about this type of Grinch. I'm sure it's just a word he used because he thought it rhymed or something, but that's the first technical appearance of Dr. Seuss mentioning a Grinch. Now, we all know the story of how the Grinch stole Christmas. First, he's all mean and bad and wants to steal kids' presents. And then once he does, he sees all the townsfolk getting together and singing hallelujah or whatever. And then his heart grows 3 times the size and he's all nice and he gives all the presents back and he eats dinner with the Whovilles. And it's a happy ending. It's a good kid's story. There's a good moral. Don't be a Grinch, as I mentioned before. But Krampus is quite a bit different. Now, Krampus isn't as popular as the Grinch, but I think that's for good reason, because he's definitely not as family friendly as the Grinch is. He doesn't grow his heart 3 times larger in the end or whatever. He doesn't really have an ending to his story. He's like Santa. He just keeps going, I guess. Now, Santa originates from St. Nicholas of Myra. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Which is like not an ancient Greek city, but an old Greek city in modern day Turkey. And he was just a bishop who would go around giving gifts to good people. Krampus actually originates from not a Christian thing, actually. Despite his devilish appearance, he actually originates from the old pagan German religions. It's theorized that he has existed since the 6th and 7th century. So after St. Nicholas, because St. Nicholas was around the 300s, I think, 200, 300 AD. But Krampus didn't start to originate in actual Christian writing until the 1500s. Now, in the sort of early lore, like not early as in like back in the medieval ages, but like early 1900s, late 1800s, Krampus and St. Nicholas were seen as a duo.
Okay, guys, I got this work.
Krampus was actually St. Nicholas's servant, not his partner, but that doesn't change too much about what I'm going to say next, so yeah. Santa, St. Nicholas, would give presents to the children, the good children, and Krampus would punish the bad children. These punishments can include, but are not limited to, whipping kids with branches and chains, eating children, and in some cases, taking them to hell. Now, if you want your own Krampus, yeah, he's not the greatest. He's not the greatest guy. Now today, I'm not going to be talking about Krampus or the Grinch. Today, I'm going to be talking about the Yule Man, otherwise known as SCP-4666. Now, the Yule Man, as you can tell, is an SCP, and because of that, I'm gonna have to explain a lot about what SCP is. You probably already know, but if you don't, it's this big fictional organization / writing project that contains anomalous creatures, entities, places, all this stuff. It catalogs it into these things called SCPs. Each of them are all pretty different in their own way. They can range from wholesome to creepy to gross. I read this one about this dude with his dog, and it was really sweet and wholesome. And then there was another one, which I'm actually going to get into a little bit in this, about a giant demon trapped in a pregnant woman. So that's nice. But anyway, I'm going to read this article. If you've already read the article or just want to skip to a synopsis, I'll have a timestamp in the description and on the screen right now, so you can just skip to there. But with that being said, let's get into it. Item number SCP-4666. Object class Keter. Yes, it's pronounced Keter, not Keter, Cater. I looked it up. Special containment procedures. Web traffic and law enforcement channels worldwide are to be monitored for evidence of SCP-4666 activity, and particularly for cases of stalking or reports of anomalous phenomena involving families with young children. Should a Weissnacht event be suspected to be in progress, the nearest containment task force is to be dispatched to attempt containment of SCP-4666. Standard PDP-8 humanoid first contact protocols apply. If you don't know, Weissnacht is German. Nacht means night, but Weiss is an old Germanic word that means white. So Weissnacht event means white night event. Media coverage of family deaths attributed to SCP-4666 is to be suppressed or falsified to make said deaths appear as non-anomalous home invasion murders. Forensic evidence in SCP-4666-A instances collected by non-Foundation agencies are to be confiscated and witnesses amnesticized. Description: SCP-4666 is currently believed to be a single, exceptionally long-lived humanoid entity of unknown origin. Survivors of Weissnacht events typically describe SCP-4666 as a very tall, between 2 meters and 2.3 meters, elderly male of European descent, with an extremely emaciated appearance. The entity always appears completely naked, even when observed outdoors in freezing weather. Though the nature and extent of its anomalous properties remain uncertain, SCP-4666 appears capable of instantaneous or near instantaneous travel to any location north of 40 degrees north latitude, and possibly to any location on Earth. SCP-4666 activity occurs exclusively within a period of 12 consecutive nights every year, from the night of December 21st or 22nd to the night of January 1st or 2nd. This is the time of Yule, celebrated by the old Germanic cultures before they got converted to Christianity. I will discuss that more in my theories and explanation portion. This period is known as SCP-4666 Active Phase. During this phase, in what are termed Weissnacht events, SCP-4666 will appear at dwellings in one or multiple locations north of 40 degrees north latitude. In all known Weissnacht events, these dwellings have shared the following characteristics: isolated rural location, home to a family with at least one child under the age of 8, and situated in an area with snow cover lasting throughout the duration of the event. Weissnacht events consist of the following general progression. Nights 1 through 7, children will report seeing SCP-4666 in the vicinity of their family dwelling. The entity will typically be observed watching the dwelling from a distance, such as from across a nearby field or from the edge of a neighboring forest. In some cases, children will report waking up at night to find SCP-4666 watching them sleep through a window. Nights 8 through 11. Family members, including the parents, will report sounds of footsteps coming from the roof or the attic. An extremely unpleasant odor will also frequently be noticed inside the dwelling. No cause for these phenomena will be found. As a result, parents will often begin to suspect that their family is being stalked, or even that their dwelling might be haunted. Night 12. Over the course of the night, one of two scenarios will occur. The first, and most common, is that SCP-4666 will kill all members of the family save for one child under the age of 8, whom it will abduct. SCP-4666 will inflict incapacitating injuries to family members while they are sleeping. then herd them into a single room of the dwelling where it will proceed to kill them in view of each other. The method of killing varies with the event and will typically be preceded by some form of torture, which appears to serve a ritualistic purpose. In the second scenario, which has occurred in roughly 15% of known Weihnacht events, SCP-4666 will not harm the family. Family members will report hearing footsteps inside their dwelling during the night, though no signs of forced entry will be found. In the morning, children will discover presents at the foot of their beds. These will consist of toys crudely crafted from the remains of human children. The criteria, if any, by which SCP-4666 determines the outcome of a Weihnacht event are unknown. Discovery: SCP-4666's existence and ongoing activity were first detected in 1974 through the Foundation's newly implemented Anomalous Signature Recognition Program, when several highly similar home invasion incidents resulting in family deaths were found to have occurred throughout the Northern Hemisphere during the night of January 1st or 2nd. Extensive research into civilian and law enforcement archives worldwide eventually uncovered evidence of probable Weihnacht events for nearly every preceding year, going back to the late 18th century, average of 3.1 known events per year. Numerous historical documents were also found which appear to describe SCP-4666 activity occurring prior to this period, in some cases as early as the 2nd century AD in Europe and Russia, and as early as the 1st century BC in Scandinavia. Fingerprints belonging to the same humanoid entity have been discovered at the locations of all Foundation-investigated Weihnacht events. These have been matched to a partial fingerprint found preserved in dried blood on a recovered SCP-4666-A instance, dating back from 1873. The fingerprints present characteristics not known to occur in human beings. Note the unique double whorl pattern. Human-like white hairs were also recovered from the locations of several Weihnacht events, though no DNA, human or otherwise, could be extracted from them. Okay, so synopsis. SCP-4666, or the Yule Man, can travel anywhere north of the 40-degree north parallel. He goes into people's houses, kills and tortures the family right in front of each other, kidnaps the kid, and has been doing this for a long time. He appears to be some sort of old European man, and seems to do his torture for ritualistic purposes. Now that's the end of what I'm going to read from the SCP-4666 article. There are some addendums and a lot more stuff to it, so if you want to go check that out, you can go ahead. I have it linked in the description, but I am still going to mention a few addendums if they come up, if they're important. But there are also a couple other SCP articles that mention 4666. One of which being SCP-5000, which if you don't know, one of my favorite SCPs, probably my favorite, one of the best written in my opinion. It's about a suit that was found that has logs of an alternate universe or perhaps the future, where the SCP Foundation turns against humanity and releases all these SCPs. SCP-4666 is mentioned through the SCP Foundation creating temporal anomalies to make it Christmas time everywhere. Which, it's interesting that they say Christmas time and not Yule time, but he's also mentioned in SCPs 6436 and 978. 6436 is this entity that exists all over the internet and can pretty much predict human activity perfectly. And they tested if it could predict the Yule Man's whereabouts and where he's going to attack next. 6436 was asked to predict when and where a Weihnacht event would occur, and it gave the Foundation 17 potential dates for Weihnacht events at 346 possible locations, but none of them were correct. So this is more explaining how this SCP can't predict anomalous events. It doesn't really tell us anything about the Yule Man, but he's actually mentioned in the extended test logs of 978. If you don't know what 978 is, it is a camera that whoever or whatever has been taken a picture of, instead of showing the picture of that person or thing, it shows what that person or thing wants to be doing. For example, if it took a picture of me, it would show a picture of me finally finishing this goddamn video. SCP-4666 was observed positioned amidst desiccated trees, maintaining a watchful gaze upon a residence from a considerable distance. And the photo result was the Yule man depicted seated on a sofa chair adjacent to a fireplace, adorned in a soiled Santa Claus attire, surrounded by presents saturated in blood containing toys housing human appendages with inadequately wrapped packaging. The Yule man maintains a disquieting grin while making direct eye contact with the camera. There was a note that was an agent.
"We've spotted SCP-4666. I repeat, we've spotted SCP-4666. Seems like it's already on the hunt. Send Containment Task Force to coordinates. Beep boop bop boop bop bop. ASAP."
That's my best agent voice. Hopefully that wasn't too cringy, but now, as I said before, I was going to mention the woman pregnant with a demon. That is SCP-231-7, who is a woman that, if she gives birth, she will cause an XK level event, which is like the end of the world or the universe or something like that, because she will release the Scarlet King. Yeah, a lot of lore to that. I'm not going to get too into that. It reads here that once every 24 hours, SCP-231-7 is subjected to data expunge, which has effectively replaced Procedure 110 Montauk, which, if you don't know, 110 Montauk is this... Nobody knows what actually happens. It's implied from something as tame as reading a bedtime story to something as brutal as... I can't even mention in this video. It's really... The theories range a lot, is what I'm trying to say. But anyway, it's been replaced by this thing called data expunged, which lessens the psychological impact on SCP-231-7. SCP-4666 collects toys resulting from this interaction and places them into his sack. The sack undulates with motions of its inhabitants. I don't know why they mentioned that. Little weird, but yeah, he just collects the toys resulting from data expunged with 231-7. Yeah, that's the last of his mentions in other SCP articles. Now, this could mean that 4666 is making toys for 231-7, or this could mean the opposite, and 4666... the Yule man, I gotta just start calling him that. I can't say 4666 forever. The Yule man collects these toys and gives them to the 15% of children that get the toys. He is mentioned in two stories. One of them, not a fan of. The other one, not a fan of, but in a different way. The first one is about him collecting children. I think it's from his perspective. He's never actually mentioned in the story, but there is a link to his article in it, and it's basically just about him kidnapping a bunch of children, and there's a lot of weird parts in it that I'm very much not a fan of. And then there's another one, which is a joke article about 106 and the Yule man doing some naughty list things, some redacted things, some data expunged things. Yeah, but I'm just gonna ignore them. So, yeah.
I'm pissing right now, and it's high noon.
Now, why is he called the Yule Man and not Evil Santa Claus?
Santa's got a surprise.
Krampus or something like that. Yule is an ancient holiday celebrated by the Norse and early Germanics of Europe before Christianization happened. The holiday is typically celebrated from the 21st of December to January 1st, which are called the 12 Days of Yule, which are kind of the origins of the 12 Days of Christmas, but anyway, that's also SCP-4666's active phase. So there's a connection there of why he's called the Yule Man and not Father Evil Christmas, or so, I can't come up with a creative name for an evil Santa. It also mentions in the article that SCP-4666 evidence has dated back to Scandinavia further than the rest of Europe, which is interesting because Yule originates from the Norse tradition of Yuletide, which was the festival associated with, again, the winter solstice and the shortest day of the year, but also celebrating the Norse god Odin, who sometimes is depicted as leading a hunting party during this time. Now, there are some obvious connections to St. Nicholas or Santa Claus that I mentioned in the part that I read, like giving gifts and just the general Christmas time sort of thing. But the thing I did not mention was what happens to the children when they get abducted. In the article, there is an interview that is conducted with a child who survived the Yule Man kidnapping her. And again, the article is linked in the description, and I will also link a YouTube reading if you want to hear the whole thing and not have to read, I guess. But the gist of it is that she was kidnapped. She worked to make toys from her fellow children in the Yule Man's workshop, or it's described as a sort of cave, I think. And once she got too exhausted to make the toys, she was turned into a toy herself. She was described as pretty much being absolutely, mangled, is the only word I can use, into a doll. And her eyes are replaced with rocks, her fingers are broken and painted with the blood of, it's pretty gross. But she survives just barely enough to conduct an interview with someone. And originally she's speaking an unknown language, which is later found out to be some sort of Proto-Germanic language, which is interesting because it goes back to the sort of Norse/Germanic sort of origins of this creature. But then she starts speaking Russian to the agent who's interviewing her. She talks about what happened, and eventually she dies because of all that's happened to her. And there are those obvious connections to Santa Claus. Like mentioned in 978's test logs, he had a Santa costume on, so that's part of it. There's the sack that's mentioned, but instead of carrying presents, it carries children. There's the workshop where the children are basically the elves. And he's an old white dude. I mean, that's probably the biggest connection there is, am I right? Now again, it is mentioned in the article that it's not known who gets the presents and who doesn't, who gets kidnapped instead. It doesn't seem 50-50. It could just be random. I like to assume that it's naughty children, but then again, that would mean that 85% of all the children he stalks are naughty. But who knows, maybe because he's such an ancient creature, what we would consider fine today was naughty in his time. It's mentioned in multiple logs and in the article that his method of torture and killing is very ritualistic, bringing it back to that pagan sort of origin. So my theory, really, it's not based on too much aside from that ritualistic sort of aspect. The fact that he follows the 12 Nights of Yule, I think he probably comes from some sort of ritual in ancient Scandinavia. Maybe he was summoned, maybe he was created in some sort of way by these ritualists. Maybe he comes from another universe. Who knows? There's not a lot known about him, but I think that's probably the best explanation someone could come up with for this. He's mentioned as appearing earlier in Scandinavia than anywhere else. His name's the Yule Man, which comes from Yuletide, a Norse thing. So that's the best theory I can come up with to where he comes from. Again, it's SCP. It's supposed to be a big mystery. But I like trying to come up with my own solutions for this.
What the is bro yapping about?
I think you should shoot him.
Agreed. Shoot his ass.
I think I'm gonna shoot his
I think
ass.
you should shoot him.
I'm gonna shoot him.
Okay, shoot his
I'm gonna
ass.
shoot him.
Alright, shoot him.
I'm gonna shoot.
So yeah, before I go, what's this? This is this is a little weird. That looks just like my thumbnail. I'm not trying to start beef or anything, but like, is that really a coincidence? Anyway, get the hell out of my sight.